All right, welcome to another episode of the Better by the Numbers podcast, presented by Life Metrics. We are at the third annual Roundtable of Longevity Clinics. I'm here with Sham. Sham, thank you for
Hi,
joining us.
Erin.
Can
Thank
you
you.
tell us what you do and what your company does in the longevity space?
Okay, so a little bit of an introduction.
Mhm.
I'm Sham. I'm a medical doctor by profession. I've been in the industry for about 20 odd years. So I
Okay.
started off as clinical critical care intensivist. Graduated out here in the US. I'm South African. Went back
Wow.
home to South Africa and subspecialized as an ICU intensivist.
Wow.
And I moved to Singapore about 10 years ago, and I realized that I just needed a little bit of a break. So I switched careers and I moved to a company called International SOS. And they basically gave me a little, long story short, a different take on medicine where I sort of got to understand a little bit about global medical assistance and medical evacuations. And I got into business consulting, and then I was approached by Accenture, which is a management consulting business,
Mhm.
back in 2020. And I sort of led their well-being program for their software and platform clients within commercial content moderation. So clients like Meta, Google,
Oh, wow.
ByteDance, and I
Okay.
sort of created a well-being program that took care of the mental health and well-being of these people that sort of act as the guardians of the internet almost,
Okay.
because
All
they
right.
sort of look at things on a spectrum of like butterflies and fairies to acts of terror, child pornography. So how do you
Wow.
sort of show due diligence for folks
And
like
what
this?
you mentioned social media companies and how
Yeah,
it,
soft
so
and
you were
platform.
looking at the impacts of someone's mental
Yeah, the
well-being
mental
as they're
health,
going
of
through this.
course.
That is so cool.
And even if they
And-
don't like see ugly things, these were folks that potentially were bombarded with about 25,000 images a day,
yeah,
and
and that's
that
just a
can
lot
be
of information
cognitively
overload. Yeah.
draining. Yeah. So it was interesting work. And then, long story short, as most companies do, there was a reshuffling, and I reported into the US, and then I lived in Singapore, so I had to sort of find a job locally. And I'm very passionate about being a doctor. So I mean, for me, it doesn't matter if I'm treating a patient as long as I'm close to leading people to health and well-being. And I couldn't quite find that fit at Accenture. So I moved to Chi Longevity, and I've been there for about a month. And my role is I basically head their medical operations across Camden Clinic and the Four Seasons Hotel. And that's what's brought me here to this conference today.
Wow.
Yeah, well,
Wow.
for the
Oh
last
man,
3 days,
what a
rather.
story. Yeah, I know, honestly. Okay, so I love that. So you come from traditional medicine and you are moving into longevity space or you know, expanding on it. I always ask what bridges the gap from longevity to traditional medicine.
Well, for me, I think, personally, I've always been very passionate and purposeful about leading people to health and well being. And for me, I think at the point in my life, I feel like traditional medicine is very erratic and reactive almost. And when you think about traditional medicine, it's about treating sick people.
Mm.
And people have a very negative connotation about that, about going to see a doctor because I'm sick or I'm potentially going to be sick. But whereas longevity medicine is very forward footed, and it's all about how can we get you to be the better version of yourself. So we're not saying you're going to live forever, because we know death is a certainty at this point anyways.
Right. So, right, right.
But it's all about like how can we sort of make the years that you are living count. And it's all about moving that narrative from lifespan to health span. And it's just being healthier for the years that you do live. So it's about forward footed, and it's about this joint venture where you come in on an equal grounding to say, I'm committed. And that comes from a very different layer of motivation. So there is that positive connotation. And I'm a strong believer that when there's a shared sort of motivation, it tends to almost command success a lot better.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I've heard a couple of different goals in the longevity space.
Yeah.
You as a medical professional, would your goal to would your goal be to help someone live longer, or would it be to make their last couple of years on this earth less painful?
So I think it would be a combination of both. If I had to look at it from a macro lens, it would be yes, ideally, I would want humanity to live longer,
Mhm.
but healthier.
Yeah.
Because I do see a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of people in practice as a traditional doctor that lived long lives, but they were like reeked with all sorts of musculoskeletal aches and pains, dementia, cardiovascular disease, and it wasn't any quality of life. So it is, yes, I would want people to live longer, but healthier as well, to have robustness in their ability to think and move and live and love, for the years that they do have.
So do you believe the longevity space is the pathway to that? Do you believe
I
this is-
believe it is potentially the pathway if we can sort of get in some guardrails. And I think one of the reasons I attended this was to understand what we can do as a collective to start benchmarking the industry and bringing clarity and evidence-based safety to the science of it, because I really believe that the future of humanity depends on us being able to do this in a safe way that people can actually be safeguarded against. I wouldn't say, just from all the noise that's out there.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably heard the debates that go
Of
on
course, yeah.
about there's all these new peptides and there's all these new interventions. It's all about safety first. Let's first do no harm. It's no use just jumping on the bandwagon and finding out that, hey,
Yeah, maybe
people
this
are
wasn't the
actually
best,
net
right?
worse off,
Yeah,
for it. And
right.
it was counterintuitive. So I'm absolutely a fan of longevity, but done safely with proper testing first. And then let's be front-footed about it and let's be preventative, but in a safe way.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. And just one of the few questions I asked somebody at the end is, what at this specific roundtable did you take away that was like imperative? That was something that you.
So the imperatives I took away was I was very pleasantly surprised that longevity is so mainstream. I thought, it's still like I didn't understand like how global it was, and it's very reassuring to understand that these conversations aren't happening in silos. It's good that we actually starting to benchmark the industry, because I got that very strongly, because Chi Longevity is literally one of the partnering clinics for the International Institute of Longevity. And one of the key outcomes is that they would like to start putting in some guardrails and benchmarking in the industry so as to make it safe for practitioners. And also in terms of how do we get this accredited in the longer term, in terms of can medical students, can doctors coming into the profession choose this as
Can this be a
intentional
pathway?
pathway?
Yeah.
And I think that was lovely. And the other lovely thing was the focus on women's health, because I think women's health has traditionally been one of those very misunderstood and underserved,
Overlooked. Yeah.
and if I can say it not so tongue-in-cheek, like almost negligibly so, in terms of what we can do for women that are aging, maybe not even aging, just women from a variant function, dysfunction, and hormonal perspective, and what's within the art of possible today safely, and the education we can be running for women globally at all stages of their life. So I was.
And you think that starts at this movement here?
Oh yes, I think
Nice.
so. I think if you look at traditional medicine and what they're doing in the space, it's very limited and it's very after the fact. And I think having these conversations early and bringing it to the forefront is essential. And it's platforms like this that make it happen.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what are you most looking forward to in the next couple of years? What do you see the trend being?
Well, I honestly see the trend in safe longevity. When I came in here, yes, of course, AI is the big buzzword, and I can see definitely how technology can partner to actually amplify the longevity pathway. I see it already in what we do at our clinics, right? I mean, AI can take a multitude of data and make a lot of sense out of it. I don't think that the human factor will be quite eliminated, because I think we do need humans to sort of bring meaning and interpretation to all that data. And I can tell you what patients are looking for aren't like an 800-page data document. They're looking for insights. They're looking for meaning, and they actually need to have guidance from another human with empathy that can understand their lot in life, that can understand their struggle and the pressure, and guide them to health and well-being. And yes, the tech's needed, but I think also in parallel, getting our human capital equally on par
Yeah.
is necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the longevity space is, I keep hearing that it's very well known that it's it's much more accessible to the wealthy.
Yes, of course.
How do you feel the path forward should be to get it to the masses?
Clearly, I feel like it should be something that is equitable,
Mhm.
and it should be something that's at some point available to everybody. It should be everybody's right, and I'm not going to point fingers or draw to geographies of the world, but look at what's happening in the country that we're currently in.
Yeah.
Look at access to basic healthcare and the cost incentive. So I mean, right now in its current iteration, it's true, even if I look within our clinic parameters, it's really just accessible to the high net worth and ultra high net worth people who can afford these testing, because the testing itself is really expensive. But I think as we go along and as it becomes more inclusive and as the tests become, more mainstream, I can definitely see that the cost would get lower and it would actually become more accessible. But I think governments need to start thinking about how they can actually fund this movement,
Yes.
because it's relevant. And if we look at globally, people are getting older, and globally we are sitting with an issue where there is major issues with fertility. So fewer babies being born,
Right.
and
That's just
people
going to hurt
getting
humanity,
older,
regardless.
and people are getting older currently in a not very healthy way, if I can put it that way. So how do we help people age more gracefully? And in parallel, what can we do with healthier people that can be more fertile, so we can
Agreed.
actually get more
Yeah.
babies? So I think it's a win-win situation for everybody, and it's a very relevant conversation to have. Global leaders come in, governments come in, because we need the funding.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
lastly, how do we find you, Shanam? How do we
So
find
you
you and follow
can
your work?
find me at Chi Longevity. We're based out of Singapore. We currently have 2 clinics, one at the Camden Medical Center and one at the Four Seasons. And I'm based out of Singapore.
Do you have a website?
Yes, chilongevity.com.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. I
Absolutely.
appreciate
Thank you.
you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. All right. That wraps up
Okay.
this episode of the Better by the Numbers podcast presented by Life Metrics. Thank you so much. Catch you on the
Thank
next one.
you.
Thank you.